The Living Building Challenge is for sure a challenge. That's why it has that in its name.
When you learn that much about something and you see it implemented like you do with the Stanley Center and their mission, it can't help but change you.
The work that the Stanley Center is doing, realizing that history and that sense of place is so important. That connects you to it and it gives you a sense of pride.
There really is something sort of magical about taking all of these dreams and aspirations and values and turning them into something real. The Stanley Center is a place where smart people come together to tackle some of the biggest threats to peace and security in the world. Climate change, the threat of nuclear weapons, the threat of mass atrocities and genocide. These are all things that affect everyone on the planet, and there's no one organization, no one country that can fix these things. It's going to take cooperation. It's going to take collaboration. The fact that we're located in the middle of the country rather than on one of the coasts or in some other world capital is a defining feature of who we are. And we felt that it was time for us to move into some new space that would really facilitate the way we want to work today, and space that would reinforce the kind of culture that we're trying to build at the Stanley Center. I think we looked at 50, 60 different potential sites in the area. In the end, we came down to a couple of locations in downtown Muscatine. One of them used to be the Muscatine Library. This building had sat abandoned for sale, for a couple of years. We looked at our values and said, yeah, it'd be nice to build a brand new building, but we could really do a lot more for the community if we renovated this building that would probably continue to sit abandoned for many more years. And also, we knew that the most environmentally sound building is the one you don't have to build. So doing a renovation would actually help us meet many of our environmental goals as well. We wanted to create a building that would put the health and well-being of the community and the neighborhood front and center, and really have a net positive impact on the environment. I hadn't heard of the Living Building Challenge before this, but it became apparent that this was really the thing that aligned most closely with our values.
The Living Building Challenge is the most advanced and holistic framework for sustainable design performance areas. It really sets the highest bar for what good looks like in architecture. The goal of having buildings like this is to have a net positive effect on the environment and for the people that occupy those spaces.
When I first heard about the Living Building, I was skeptical. It is an extremely ambitious project for a lot of reasons. It's new, it is unique. There are some metrics that are really hard to meet.
Having this be the first LBC building in Iowa is instrumental. I think it can be really impactful.
One of the things that became clear to us was that we would be pathfinders here, that we would be setting out to do something that not many people had done before. And while that would certainly have challenges, it would also create a path for others to follow.
There are 7 pillars in the Living Building Challenge. They are really high design aspirations and performance aspirations for what buildings should do. We have place, water, energy, materials, health and happiness, beauty, and equity. One thing that's really unique about the Living Building Challenge is how it asks the project team to really reflect on the place where the project is located. What is the culture here, and how might we actually positively support that culture to be celebrated?
We really want to honor the fact that, we are not the original inhabitants of this land. And so that really put us on a path to trying to develop authentic, meaningful relationships with local indigenous people.
The Muscatine people first moved our way down and across the Great Lakes region over 1,000 years ago. We've always been a tribe that lived in wooded areas near rivers. The Musquaquis are farmers, and we've always farmed corn, beans, and squash. So we would have been living certainly all along the Mississippi. If you look at the maps that Americans first made when they came into Iowa, there were 2 villages actually on either side of what would today be Muscatine, both within 10 miles.
There were hundreds, if not thousands, of people living in this place below the bluff. This area was a veritable supermarket, talking about how plentiful the game was and how easy the crops were to grow. When the first European settlers arrived, they believed they had all of the answers.
When settlers began to pour in and take over, some of the Meskwakis made agreements with some of the settlers. American history characterizes this as the Meskwakis ceded this piece of land, but what these treaties are, they're gunpoint treaties with the threatened extermination of your people by a huge military force if you don't sign. In 1845, Meskwaki people were marched out of Iowa, and the U.S. government took Meskwakis to southwest Kansas. You can really think of it more as an internment camp. We left with more than 1,000 people, and by the time that 12-year time span had elapsed, we came back with, just a little bit more than 300. That was a genocidal event for us.
Colonialism has real impact on real people, and we want to acknowledge our role in that. And I think being very clear about the history of this piece of land is really the first step toward us acknowledging our role in sort of the trauma that's played out across this country over decades and centuries. This location is meaningful in a number of ways, not just for the connection with indigenous people, but also it is right next door to the Alexander Clark House. Alexander Clark was a Muscatine resident, one of the first black graduates from the University of Iowa Law School. He went on to become U.S. ambassador to Liberia.
Alexander Clark had sent his daughter, Susan, to the public school, which was all white at that time. And of course, they said, nope, we don't want anyone black attending the school. So he fought that so that Susan could go to school. He filed a lawsuit. It went up to the Iowa Supreme Court, and he won that case in 1868. And Susan did go to the high school, and she did graduate, in the top of her class. That affected, desegregation in schools, statewide.
Learning about the history of this place has impacted all of us at the Stanley Center. We're humbled to learn about the connection that the Meskwaki have to this land, and saddened and angered as we understood the effects of colonialism that their tribe continues to experience. We're honored that this building directly behind me was once the first high school integrated in the state of Iowa due to the work of Alexander Clark. And we hope that by elevating that history, we can remind everyone of the positive impact that people of color have had here. Being able to see the Mississippi River from our front door reminds us of the sizable impact it's had on the industries of Muscatine, from pearl buttons to furniture and everything in between. And finally, we're thrilled that we share our location with a former library, because we believe strongly in the value of education, and we're excited to continue that tradition for an even broader group of people moving forward. Taking the time to understand the history and impact of this place motivates us even more to honor those who came before us in every word, deed, and interaction that comes from our new building. The water system that we're installing is one that will capture almost all of the rainwater that comes onto our site, treat it and turn it into potable water. We are actually trying to create something that will be a net benefit for the community and the neighborhood. So we decided to talk to our neighbors, the Muscatine Center for Social Action.
I think Stanley Center fits the bill to be that perfect neighbor for us. We know that they need to reduce their water usage, so they're going to be coming over to our building and replacing our shower heads and toilets and faucets, so together we can have a lower footprint.
Partnering with MCSA has been a really special experience, and in addition to the plumbing work we did with them, we were also able to replace their washing machines with higher efficiency units to even further lower our combined footprint. Without this water system, a building like ours would typically consume more than 40,000 gallons of clean water and generate more than 25,000 gallons of wastewater. But with this system in place, we were able to cut our potable water use nearly in half and completely offset our wastewater. A big reason for that difference is because of how the system is designed. 100% of our water demands are met on site by collecting rain in our 2 cisterns with a combined 13,500 gallon capacity. A system like this makes a positive environmental impact because it reduces the amount of water we need to pull from other places. It significantly reduces the amount of wastewater that needs to be treated, and it keeps stormwater on site.
I'm very excited about the solar panels that will be on the rooftop and the canopy that's going to bridge across over to MCSA. I love things that solve multiple problems or address multiple issues, and that canopy, I think, is a really amazing example of that, because not only is it extending the footprint of our rooftop so that we can have more solar generation to offset our energy use, but it also is providing shade and shelter to people.
That'll be a huge benefit to them because they can actually produce enough power for them, and it'll be a huge benefit to us because to keep people out of the weather while they're waiting for the food pantry, I think will be a great way to treat those folks with some dignity.
Our solar panel system consists of 340 panels that take up 8,100 square feet of space on our roof, and the canopy over there that connects to MCSA. The panels can generate up to 186,000 kilowatt hours of energy annually, which is more than enough to meet the needs of our building. Our backup battery system can store up to 172 kilowatt hours of energy and will continue operating even in a grid outage. Excess energy created by our solar panels goes back into the grid for others to use. Most of the electrical power in Muscatine is still generated by burning coal. So our carbon footprint is significantly reduced by generating our own power. But even more exciting is the fact that any excess power we generate is fed back into the Muscatine grid, which means we can also reduce the carbon footprint for our neighbors.
Anytime that you can choose a material that's sourced locally, you're going to reduce the carbon footprint. Climate change is greatly impacted by waste and materials. And that's one of the challenges with this Living Building Challenge, is to source things as close to Muscatine as you possibly can.
The materials pedal is challenging for us. It's sometimes difficult to find products that don't include any of what's called the red list.
The red list has been really profound for architects and designers that are specifying these materials because it tells us which chemicals we should be watching out for and screening out of our specification process to make sure that we're not accidentally introducing really toxic chemicals into these spaces.
One of the effects of this project was thinking about how we make products and looking at the red list more holistically. So Stanley put the challenge on us and we went after it. So in things like our architectural walls, we were able to get them to be certified of how they meet the standard. So we had to work with our supply chain and other manufacturers and partners to figure out what's in the product. It's good for the environment, not just in the literal sense, but if the entire supply chain or ecosystem of players are now challenged to stop using those, it trickles down. Communities that are maybe not even close to us are now being asked the question, what's in the product? If you think about Stanley Center's mission to better the world, I think they were able to, on a micro scale, bring that down to the user level. You know, how do we better the workplace or better the people's environment coming together in the community?
Every surface has a story and a thought behind it. Every piece of furniture, every plant, it's there for a reason. Through the materials that we've used, through the artwork, it will become apparent that this is a intentional space that is designed for a particular purpose. I don't think I had ever heard the term biophilia before we started this process, but the idea of not only being good to nature, but this idea of bringing nature into the building.
Connecting everybody to nature was very important. So we used a lot of natural materials to create that sense of warmth. There's elements of plantings within those spaces.
There's a courtyard where we will be able to grow things that will then be donated to our neighbors, the MCSA. I'm really glad that we put a high value on biophilia to reflect not just plants, but also sort of natural forms, natural surfaces, all of those kind of things that create comfort and warmth and a sense of security and a sense of beauty.
Learning about the history of Muscatine itself, I think, is very important because it helps inform the decisions you make, the materials that you use,
They're creating button tile. That's supposed to represent the buttons that Muscatine was kind of founded on. The carpet in the living room area, it kind of can resemble rivers. Everywhere you look, there's going to be a little something that kind of is a nod to the mission or to the community.
Our friends at Newman Monson have been brilliant in their design of elements that use beauty to inspire happiness for those who visit this building. There are trees and live walls that provide a sense of nature and connection to the environment, and fitness and wellness rooms that encourage health and well-being. We've also planted a lettuce wall, which provides fresh, healthy food for those in our building and our neighbors at MCSA. There are over 300 live plants in the building, which clean the air, reduce noise levels, and are proven to reduce stress and increase productivity. And we've added a 4,500 square foot outdoor atrium, 43 windows, many of them operable, and skylights in our central area and north offices to allow more natural light into our spaces. We're certainly proud of all the ways that our building gives back to the environment, but the fact that it's also giving back to each individual who comes through the doors is even more exciting. The building itself is not just a place where people go to do a certain activity. The building itself becomes something that has that ability to promote the kind of equity and the kind of dignity that we want to see every person in the world have.
The Tree of Accountability, it's going to give the Meskwaki people a voice at the Stanley Center and also enable the Meskwaki Nation to tell the public what they need in terms of allyship and support.
The Stanley Center is envisioning utilizing the tree as a way of establishing and growing connections within the community.
Today, we still have 7 of our clans, and I would say the Meskwaki tribe is extremely healthy. Talking to Meskwaki people themselves, and also being willing to share the history of Iowa without having to censor or cover up the truth of the past. All of that is designed to be not only strengthening to our community, but to heal our community from traumas in the past.
History and that sense of place is so important. People don't know the history, the contributions that people of color have made to this country. And I think that by knowing that and those contributions, that it also helps us combat racism.
The leaves will provide a way for the public and the Native community to interact with one another, interact with this work of art. A visitor might even get ideas about what they themselves can do. That would be my goal, is that they're moved to action.
One of the most important parts of this building is the Tree of Accountability, an ever-growing art installation. The trunk and branches were created locally in partnership with Muscatine Community College using recycled metal from the old library, and the leaves are actually made of pages from recycled library books. The messages on the leaves are written by non-native settlers, the Meskwaki, and other indigenous people as a way to begin a dialogue with those of us who've benefited from colonialism. It's our hope that this living art installation will continue to grow and lead to more tangible ways of reconciliation with indigenous people.
We are extremely privileged to have the resources to invest in this type of project. And I think that we're leveraging that privilege in a really powerful way to hopefully create change that extends not just beyond the walls of this building and this city, but also much further.
When you take on the Living Building Challenge, you're helping others follow in your footsteps and make it a little bit easier for that next project team that wants to take this on.
We do a lot of local programming aimed at kids. One of the things we want them to do is to think differently about the world. And so I really feel that the building itself can serve that educational purpose that we've tried to do for many, many years. And this will be a really important resource for us in continuing that global education work in our local community.
Max Stanley, the founder of this organization, was concerned about sustainability in an ecological sense and moving in a direction consistent with a vision. And I would say his descendants today in the Stanley Center, family and staff who continue this commitment to Muscatine are really fulfilling that man's vision.
I don't think I had any idea going into it exactly how big of a project this is. But if we can do this in our small town, in the middle of the country, then I really think anyone could do it.
Welcome to the Stanley Center Living Building. What do you guys think?
It's cool. That's actually cool.
And the view.
A lot of big stuff.
The 3 years we've spent designing and renovating this space have been a time of intense learning and growth. Creating a living building is a great honor, and we look forward to a day when all buildings strive to give back more than they take. This is a vital step toward creating a sustainable future for all living things. We couldn't have done it without our partners at Newman Monson and Graham Construction, and without the guidance and inspiration from the International Living Future Institute.
How did the trees grow so fast?
I think it's really cool that the air is fresh.
You could see all the people working and stuff.
But this really isn't about us. This is about the people in Muscatine, and about future generations, about those in the Meskwaki Nation, and about people in places all over the country and beyond that are able to receive from one of the few buildings in the world that is really living, giving more than it's taking in every aspect of life.